Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, my name is Sylvia and I'm a big city mom, and that's because I live, work and raise my family in New York City. I am also super passionate about health through diet, lifestyle and nutrition. And so whenever I have some free time, which isn't very often, I blog and vlog about health, diet, lifestyle, nutrition. In today's video, I want to share with you my experiences of growing up in communist Poland. And those experiences shape my approaches to natural health, how I treat my body, nutrition, and overall health of my family. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, definitely hit that notification bell, and I'll get started with today's video. Communism organizes society in a very different ways than what you are experiencing here in the Western world. It is very bureaucratic, top-down approach, corrupt, and inefficient. And one of those symptoms of inefficiency was constant disruptions and shortages in supply chains. So it was a very common scenario where you would go to the store and there was nothing on the shelf because the truck never made it in the last week, last 2 weeks, last month, and so on. So whether we wanted or not, we had to be self-reliant, band together, build strong communities, and that was a way of surviving and oftentimes thriving in those circumstances. There was never enough food, clothes, shoes, home appliances. There were always never-ending shortages. So you had to learn it, make it yourself, or find somebody that knew their craft and could sell it to you or exchange it for some other goods. So oftentimes there was actually a whole new occupation, which was people that stayed in lines for days because if and when a word got out that there were, let's say, fridges arriving to this town, to this store, usually the retired people will spend 2 days waiting in line. They would get the fridge, sell it to you at the cost of the fridge plus the fee for standing in line. That really happened. There was, however, one positive development under communist regime. Obviously unintended, and that was a really strong family, attachment to tradition, sense of a strong community and religion, which the communists could never penetrate, destroy or uproot. And this ultimately contributed to the toppling of the communist regime in Poland. My parents got university degrees, so they had to rebrand themselves as farmers because having a law degree was antagonistic to the workers' paradise. All right, so let's look at the health, nutrition, and diet perspective. All healthcare was socialized. There wasn't a single private practice. So when you got sick, the last thing you wanted to do is to go to the doctor. That was absolutely the last resort with all your home remedies failed. Because there was just about one clinic with 2 doctors for every 3-4 villages or communities. And the wait times were crazy. You would basically spend a whole day there. And if you happen to get sick in the winter, oftentimes you didn't have a car, so you would have to find a man that had a horse with sleighing, and they would have to take you there because a regular plowing of the roads just wasn't a thing. So the last thing you wanted to do is to see the doctor. However, when you did get to see the doctor, they would be really taking their time examining you. So we had really not a lot of equipment available. There were always shortages of something, and so they would really look at your face, look into your nostrils, examine your throat with the lamp, felt your whole body, chest, your liver, your bowels, the whole examination. And that's how they would diagnose you and give you a prescription. Now, prescriptions were also limited. So for some reason, communists had very strict rules about active ingredients in the drugs. So there was very little active ingredients put into pills and antibiotics. And I actually experienced this myself because when I came here, I took a pill of acetaminophen and I just felt sedated because I just wasn't used to that much of a drug in my system. So now, when your doctor diagnosed you with a disease or problem or whatever else you were dealing with, one thing was for sure, you were always getting a concentrated vitamin C prescription, which was called rutinoscorbin. always. And the second thing was full spectrum of vitamin B. And then oftentimes you would have to buy some herbs because regular allopathic doctors then were prescribing you actual herbal remedies, and most of the pharmacies would carry them as well. And antibiotics were not really available, so and they were really prescribed only when all else failed, and only if you had a bacterial infection. Now, because of the serious drug shortages, when it comes to dentistry, most of the procedures were done without anesthesia. And so I had a couple of root canals done without any numbing. And when I moved to England, I went to the dentist there and I said that, no, I need the filling. You don't need to really numb me, I'm used to it. And he refused to work on me until I accepted anesthesia. On the other hand, there was this whole another class of village healers that were very popular among people. Some of them had such good reputation that people from the entire country would flock to see them. And my parents took me to one as well, and that's because when I was 5 or 6 years old, I had this mysterious disease that allopathic doctors could not diagnose and couldn't figure out what this was. Basically, anything I ate every day, at the end of the day, I would throw up. So my body couldn't absorb any food or hardly any food. So I was really thin, tiny, I was anemic, I had huge dark circles under my eyes, and I was just disappearing. And so they took me to this psychic priest. It was in this mountainous region of Poland, in some town. They took me to the church. Then the priest looked at me, grabbed my hand, took my pulse, and told me, oh, you have 3 chewing gums stuck to the walls of your stomach, and your stomach cannot work properly to digest and process the food. And I'll tell you in a few why this happened. So the remedy for this situation was to eat rice cakes 10 days in a row, nothing but rye, breakfast, lunch, dinner with some salt. It had to be steamed and really coarse. And I would be also allowed to drink a black tea, unsweetened and without milk. And I remember how miserable I was. I remember staring at the bowl of this brownish, coarse grains, and I really didn't want to eat them. I remember crying, but I think within 7 days, that's what my mom tells me, the chewing gums actually came out on the other side. Now you might be wondering why I had chewing gums in my stomach. So at some point during a family gathering, somebody smuggled chewing gums, I think, from Austria, and gave it to the kids. And I didn't know what chewing gum was, neither you could actually easily get chewing gum in any of the stores. So when I saw those colorful round things, they looked to me as candy, and I went crazy for it. And so I just, chew them and swallow them one after another. And that's how I got myself into this mysterious disease. The most treasured food was meat and animal fats. If you were really well off, you were eating beef. If you were doing okay, you were eating mostly pork and some lamb. And if you're really poor, you were relegated to chicken. Everything was cooked in tallow and lard, and if you were really well off, duck fat. Butter was somewhat of a luxury as well, so if you couldn't eat it every day, you would use lard, put it on your bread and salt it, and that was your substitute for bread and butter. Vegetable oils wasn't a thing. There must have come online when I was 13, 15 maybe, and that was largely when communism was all gone. And my grandparents would never come close to it. For one, it would burn in a lot lower temperatures than tallow or lard, but also the food didn't taste as good when it was cooked in vegetable oils. Most of the vegetables that we cultivated were beans, a variety of root vegetables, cabbages, potatoes, And that would be about it. Everything else wouldn't really last through the winter, and you couldn't really ferment it. So that was our vegetables. We also had some fermented fruits, and or we convert them into syrups. There was a types of pears and apples that we were able to store in the cellars, but they did not resemble modern apples and pears at all. The skin was really thick, golden brown, so you couldn't quite eat it with the skin, but they would last deep into the winter if you just left them in the cellar. Sometimes you would have to go in and check if there was any apple or pear that went bad, so you remove it so that doesn't spoil the rest. But when you pick those apples or pears, you would have to definitely peel them, and most of the time we would put it in the pies, baked or cook them, because they were still really sour and hard to eat as raw. Bone broths and meat stocks were another staple of our diets, especially in the winter months. Just about every soup was cooked on some kind of a bone. And when you were sick, had some type of a respiratory virus, for sure you were drinking bone broth breakfast, lunch and dinner, and on top of that you will get a slab of liver fried in lard, and you have to eat it to replenish your minerals and vitamins. If you are able to maintain your own vegetable and fruit garden, you would have to have some type of livestock, and that typically would be a single cow, maybe 2 pigs, couple sheep and few chickens. Now, it was really important to have animal food for the long cold winters, but also you needed their manure to fertilize your soil so you can grow your fruits and vegetables, because there was no such a thing as synthetic fertilizers until I was a teenager. Again, when I was like 14, 15, when the communism was basically gone. And so my father was raising pigs and sheep. We had our own smokehouse, so we had our own ham, sausage, and smoked pork belly, which was absolutely delicious. I wasn't allowed to see how my father was slaughtering the animals, but I did it anyway. So I must have been like about 6, 7 years old. I hid in the slaughterhouse that my father had. I climbed on top of the bags of animal feed. They were almost to the ceiling, and I was staying there and watching how my father and my uncle killed the pig, cut open it, remove the bowels, clean the bowels to prepare it for sausage. If you can help it, don't watch how sausage is being made. It's delicious, but the process of making it is quite ugly. Besides that, we had a massive garden of a fruit garden with many different types of apples, cherries, plums, black currants, red currants, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries. And so basically we didn't buy anything but like salt, baking soda, maybe some spices. Since there was such a massive shortage of drugs and not enough doctors, just about every household had on hand dandelion, melissa, St. John wort, chamomile, peppermint, and they were really abundant. They would grow by the roadside, on the pastures, by the bushes. Usually, as early as you were probably 7 or 10, one of the elderly members of community would take you and they would teach you how to pick them and store them. So you would learn like this herb gets picked in May, this in August, this one on new moon, this one on full moon. You would typically either pick it to the paper bags or bunch them together, hang them by the door and let them dry completely, and then you would store it in the attic. Fresh green cabbage leaf was a heal-it-all remedy. It was used for headaches, insect bites, sunburns, sunstrokes, all kind of swellings on their skin. So anytime you had some type of a headache, complaint about your skin, or you got sunburned, my mom would wrap our heads in cabbage, or our arms when we got burned by the sun, and within a few hours we were back to normal. Thyme was another common herb used mostly for throat infections. We would make it into a tincture and then use swabs to put it on the back of our throat. So if you had a spray bottle, you could spray it on the back of your throat. If you were suffering from colds and flus, which was very common among kids, you would have to drink this warm milk concoction with freshly ground garlic, a tablespoon of honey and a tablespoon of butter. It would be all mixed. It tasted absolutely horrible, but I had to drink it anytime I was sick. If you had any kind of lung infection, either your parent that was qualified or the village healer would come by and put cups on you. They were glass cups. They would have a special stick with fire on it, and they would wield it really quickly, getting rid of the air from the cup and stick it onto your chest and your back. Kids normally would be scared of this procedure. I remember I used to cry and I didn't want to have it done. And on top of everything, you would be stuck with those massive purple marks on your chest and your back that would probably go away within a week or so. Charcoal was used for diarrhea, and you would typically have it as powder or it was compressed to a pill. But if you ran out of those, your mom would feed you a really burnt bread. Charcoal was also used to handle parasites, so they had these weird properties of binding to the parasite and it would come out eventually on the other side. All kind of fungal issues were dealt with white oak bark. So you would boil it for a few minutes and then the affected part of the body would be soaked in it for at least half an hour. If you had problems in your private areas, you would also sit in that concoction. If you are a woman and you were suffering from yeast infections, that would be a remedy for you as well. All kind of wounds, cuts, boils will be treated with a fresh leaf of buckhorn, and that little plant was found on every pasture, by the roadside. It was a common weed that we sometimes have to get rid of. So you take a fresh leaf, put it directly onto your wound, wrap it up, change it every few hours, and basically your wound would heal. All kind of food poisonings were treated with a shot of clear, well-distilled vodka and lots of black pepper in it. You took that shot, you felt super hot, your stomach was burning for a few minutes, and then your food poisoning was over. Wormwood, the herb wormwood, was also used for food poisonings, but you had to be really careful because just a little bit too much of it was really poisonous for humans. Now, younger kids were spared from all those remedies. Dried linden flowers tea with honey was used to raise and maintain the higher temperature of your body. And so when you were getting sick, you would get a drink that would help you increase your body temperature, and then you would be covered with all kind of blankets to keep that temperature going, because there was a common understanding that when you have a fever, it actually enables your body to fight the virus or bacteria. So nobody had any ideas about bringing down of the fever, especially not early in the process. If the fever was getting out of control, which happened hardly ever, typically as a result of a sunstroke, you would get fresh cabbage leaves all over you, or you would be given a really cool bath. If you sprained your wrist or ankle, we would use a raw egg white that we would put directly into the affected area, wrap it up for a couple of days, and the swelling and all problems with your joints would just go away. And finally, the cure-it-all remedy was kerosene. We would put it on our hair, faces, we would drink it, we would soak our fingers in it. It was a remedy for everything and anything. So if you run out of ideas what else to do for your body to help it, go get yourself a good quality clear kerosene and take care of your problems. By now you are probably wondering, what am I doing in New York City? I am such a farm girl. And it is true. I grew up until I was 18 in totally rural environment. But at the same time, when I was exposed to the cities, I was totally fascinated by them. I loved them. I wanted to experience the city life. So I first loved Krakow, then I moved to London, England, and I lived there for 2 years, and then I came to New York City, and I totally fell in love with it. I was young, I wanted to meet new people, I wanted to party, I wanted to have a career, like you name it, I wanted to have it and experience it. And for the most part, I did. And I have to say, New York City is a great place to meet all kind of interesting people, and I was really lucky to meet some amazing people that had a tremendous positive impact on my life, and for that I am totally grateful. Now, those experiences in my early childhood and adolescence also contributed to how I approach my health and how I take care of my family these days, even though I'm in New York City. So I have this very strong belief in holistic, natural approach to health. And if you really give the tools to your body that it needs, it will end up healing itself, and you don't really have to do any harsh drug interventions. Now, that proved to be true for me as well, because as you know, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and it isn't something that was well known back then when I was growing up. People were dying of an old age. In fact, we were told at the dinner table that so-and-so died in sleep at age 110 years old after 12 hours of working in the field. And that was a common thing we would hear at the dinner table. Now, chronic diseases just weren't really known. So I had quite a mystery to resolve for myself, but I had this instinct that I developed, I believe, by growing up in a very natural rural environment. And I believe that I can reverse this disease just by giving my body what it needs. And yes, I had to restrict my diet like crazy and be really limited with what I could eat for an extended period of time. But ultimately, I was able to reverse my rheumatoid arthritis. And for all the bad things that communism brings to people's life, the sense of being close to nature, having to be self-reliant, was one of those things that was actually positive by coincidence, for sure, because communists really didn't want that for the people. Anyway, if you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, share, comment down below, and I will see you in my Friday findings. Bye!